Hey, thank you for joining us back here at The Hard Truth About Bodybuilding and Steroids. In 2015, I believe it was, I was standing backstage talking to John Meadows, the mountain dog, and we were both competing at the Universe that year, and we stood back there and we talked pretty much the entire day, and John and I talked about a lot of different things, from the death of my daughter. He was very interested in that, and that really touched his heart, so much so that he introduced me to his wife, and she was a very, very nice lady, and the entire bodybuilding world, of course, is saddened that John is now gone. But in that year, as we stood backstage, John told me, as we were standing there for my first national show back in over 20 years, he told me, he said, Jeff, he said, you're going to place 5th today. And I said, really? He said, now, it should come down to you and me, but I will beat you today because I'm going to win. And I said, okay. And to be quite honest, I didn't have a problem losing to John. John was a fantastic guy and a really good bodybuilder. Just a phenomenal guy, phenomenal physique. But I said, why do you say that? He said, well, this is your first time here. And he said, do you see those two guys right there? I said, yeah. He said, what do you think of them? And honestly, in the competitive moment, I said, not much. I said, I'm better than they are. He goes, yeah. He goes, but they're going to place ahead of you. And he pointed to another guy that was tall and real big, and I'm short and big. And he said, what do you think about him? And I said, well, he's not really in very good shape. He's kind of fat. And he goes, yeah, well, he's going to place ahead of you too. He said, you're going to place 5th. And I was kind of blown away. And so when we all got out on stage and they lined us all up, you know how it goes. They called John out first, me out second, those two guys out, and then the one guy that John mentioned, all of us. They rotated John and I around each other a couple of times, if I remember right, and then moved me directly out to the 5th place spot, and I placed exactly where John said I would. Now, you say, Jeff, are you grousing about a 5th place in your first national show, even when you hadn't even been on stage in over 20 years? No, I wasn't, because I had just come off of a big national qualifier victory, and for my first show back in 20-something years. So I wasn't really grousing about the 5th place, but it was remarkable to see that I could put all of that time, all of that energy, all of those relational conflicts my wife and I went through, put in and go through all of those drugs and all of that stuff, and to place 5th for literally about 2 minutes on stage. You see, the truth is, to get to that point, I had paid a heavy price through that year, and so did my wife. We were both dieting. She was a national competitor as well. We were both dieting 34, 35, 36 weeks out of the year for that show. And we had come to a point where we were having some serious problems. When you have 2 people in a house that are dieting for a national show, trying to get your pro card, it's rough. And just as an example, one morning I was making eggs for us both, and so I made the eggs in one way, and my wife came downstairs and she didn't like eggs made that way. And I scrambled them, and honestly, when I scramble them, I don't want any wet eggs in there, man. I don't want any whites running. I don't want anything. I just want it cooked, right? I cooked the life out of them. And so I cooked it, and my wife looked at them, and she was like, oh, and she was very nice. She was like, honey, I don't like eggs like that. And of course, the trend man in me came out, and I immediately snapped, and I was like, what's wrong with my eggs? There's nothing wrong with these eggs. You should be able to eat these eggs. There's nothing wrong with them. And this huge fight broke out that lasted an entire week, where we hardly spoke to each other because of eggs. Man. You see, when you have a guy that is taking 10, 15, 20 times the amount of drugs that a girl may be taking a little bit of Anavar. When you have that kind of situation, you are looking for explosive problems in any relationship. And we were no different. As a matter of fact, everybody looked at us as the perfect bodybuilding couple. I was a bodybuilder, super heavy. She was a figure competitor, beautiful, phenomenal. And yet we were on the verge of collapse. Why? Because of the extremes that bodybuilding takes us to. We're going to talk about the toxic nature of bodybuilding today. And I'm excited to have my wife with me. Let's get into it.
Be strong.
Hey guys, welcome back and thank you again for tuning in. As you can see, I am really glad to have my beautiful wife with me. This is honestly her first opportunity to be on the podcast, only because she is so busy. This is one busy girl, and I am really glad to have her. And as you can see, in honor of my beautiful wife, she is a huge Wonder Woman fan. And so she has a really cool print that hangs up near our bedroom, so I put that in here today. And of course, her Wonder Woman coffee cup. She has quite a few of those. Yes. And of course, if you've never heard of Monkey Works, I challenge you to go over to Monkey Works USA and follow Monkey. We went to Israel with him and Tom Hughes and a couple of others and had a blast out there just touring the Holy Land. So again, let's get into the hard truth about bodybuilding and steroids. And so we were just kind of talking a few minutes ago that we want to keep this organic and we want to keep it raw. And so we're really not scripting a whole lot. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about with Sandra, because I want her natural reactions to this, and that is the benefit of both of us walking in the same direction. Matter of fact, the Bible even says, how can two people walk together unless they're agreed, right? And so when you have two people in a household that are going towards the same goals, there can be a lot of commonality in there and a lot of really good stuff. But there's also a lot of issues and problems in the bodybuilding lifestyle that people don't really hear about. And so I wanted to kind of talk about those today with my wife and get her natural reactions to that. And number one, I just wanted to ask her just quickly, what was it like for you to be with a guy that was completely loaded out on steroids? As a matter of fact, let me just give you one quick thing. I told them about the egg incident where I was downstairs making eggs, and you were actually very pleasant about saying that that wasn't the way you liked your eggs, and I blew up, and we got into a fight over eggs, and I mean a full-out fight over eggs, and it lasted 7 days. It lasted a full week. And when you have a guy that's loaded out on 3,000 mgs of testosterone, almost 1,000 mgs of tren, dude, let me tell you something. When tren starts talking in your head, you think you're right. She can tell me the sky is blue, and I'm going to swear it's green and be convinced it's green. So what was it like for you that you were having to deal with a guy that was so loaded out like that, and honestly thought I was right?
A little challenging. Kind of felt like I was being gaslighted a lot, but I was trying to keep the peace, and I kind of went about my ways, trying not to, kind of walking on eggshells, honestly.
Yeah.
And, it's like basically second guessing myself, like, am I doing something wrong? Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm doing it. And then I would get mad at myself and then just go round and round, basically, like, okay, no, he's on a bunch of stuff, and, just be patient. Okay, I'll be glad when this is over, but I want to enjoy this. And so it was just a roller coaster of emotions. Yay, we got this. I hate this, so up and down with the whole situation. So yeah.
So really, and guys, let me just tell you, we're talking about two people that are going in the same direction. I mean, we had the same goals to get our pro card. I mean, we were two top national competitors. I mean, we were right there in the mix of getting our pro card. And really, everybody thought we were this perfect couple. And man, we were fighting like cats and dogs. And to be quite honest, like she said, you know, half the time, or no, not even half, probably 90% of the time, the problem laid with me. And when you're on that much drug, you honestly can't tell the difference between reality and what's not reality. And guys don't talk about this aspect of it. And we've had so many people that have been just jonesing to wait to get to this subject and to hear from Sandra as well. What is it like to be with a guy that's like that? How hard is it? And you just heard her talking about half the time, you know, she felt like I was gaslighting, and quite possibly I was, but not really realizing that I was doing that, because when you're on trend and some of those drugs that are so intense and so much, you know, you are just so intense and so involved. And honestly, do you think bodybuilding is a really selfish sport?
It has to be. Like, if you are in it to win it, it becomes very selfish. And I mean, I had to, you know, really focus in on myself, and I would tend to forget on things that really needed to be taken care of at home, with my relationship, and just, it was all about me, basically. So, I mean, the good thing is you have somebody that's in the trenches with you and that's pushing you, and stay focused, get in the gym, let's go. So you had, you know, that made you keep going. But I mean, you left out all the important stuff on the back burner, basically.
Yeah.
And then you're dealing with, you know, short fuses with myself and with him. It's like that dynamite that has a short fuse is going to go off any minute. You don't even know when. So it's not an easy road. You see, everybody sees all the glitz and glam, and oh my gosh, you're so lean, and I wish I was like that. Oh my gosh, I wish I could do that. Oh, I want to look like a figure competitor. No, it's a lot of work, and you don't get to socialize with your friends. You don't get to have your little drinks on the weekends or whatever. So it's a lot. And then your relationship, it's very draining on your relationship. So you better think twice before you go the route.
Yeah, think twice before you jump, right?
Yeah.
So that's a great point. And again, we're trying not to be too scripted on this, but let's talk about just how hard it was, because we were dieting for 36 weeks in 2015 and 2017 and 18. So we had 3 years right there where we were dieting probably 70 to 80% of a year. And so it was really difficult. So we had extreme highs and extreme lows, and we really did. We had days where we would be great, everything was good, and an hour later we were having literal knockdown, drag-out fights. And then you have so much guilt as well, because you know, from my standpoint, you're in this trend haze and this drug-induced haze that, you know, all of a sudden you have these moments of clarity and you start to realize how badly I've hurt my spouse by my mouth. Just, you know, the Bible says the tongue is a world of fire, man. And it sets nature on fire because it's just so evil, right? And so you can say things. And we even still to this day, even though we are years past being retired, you know, we retired in 2019, and yet we established so many patterns back there in those years that we still at times struggle with some of those things. But the difference is now we're not loaded out on all of those drugs. And let me just say this. I know there are a lot of guys, because I'm still 245 pounds or so, that think I'm still loaded out on drugs. That is not the case. And my wife can tell you
not the same person.
That I'm not. I am not loaded out on drugs. I still take TRT. And but that is literally it. You will not find me jabbing needles all over the place. I do not do any of that stuff. I'm not taking GH and insulin and all of the I'm not doing all that stuff. But when I was, there was an extremely short fuse, and I think that was a great thing to say. That you are literally a stick of dynamite, and you are, and really you are just lit all the time, and it's just a matter of how long will it take for me to blow. or for her to blow,
Yeah.
you know? And how much guilt.
My own issues. I mean, this isn't all on the guy, so let's not, all the way and be like, yeah, this guy. No, like, it's both of you. It's both of us. There are times where I'm so hangry and so tired of dieting, and like my hormones are off, and being a female, going dieting for, back to back to back to back is not a good idea. And a lot of women do it, and they're so jacked up, their hormones are messed up, the periods stop, and that's not healthy. So it really takes a toll on a woman as well. And
we haven't even talked about, and it's okay for us to say, we're not even talking about the extremes that it puts your sex life under. And guys, your sex life is as a married couple is given by God, and it is something that ties you together. And when you are on all of those hormones, you go from all of these highs to these crashed out lows, and that's not healthy either.
No.
And so we've gone through all of those things. And I will say this, it was quite a time that we went through. And everybody, as I said, looked on the outside and said, man, there's the perfect couple. Yeah. And honestly, we smiled and everything looked great. We had sponsors and, all of this other stuff. I always had to have pictures taken and videos and all of this stuff. And we looked good on the surface. But underneath, we were crying out for help, and neither one of us could help each other because we couldn't even help ourselves at that time, because a lot of it, you just feel so like you're on a runaway train and you can't get off. Now, let me just say this, and you can comment on this. We can't say what every couple's life is like, okay? We can't do that. What we are doing is telling you the viewpoint from what I would say is the top of the nationals. And then, of course, you start over as a pro bodybuilder, because once you hit the top at the national level, now you are back at the bottom at the pro level. And so, you're starting all over. So it's a never ending thing. And the Bible says the eye is never filled with seeing, right? And so the problem that we had is, from my standpoint, I was never big enough, right? And here I am, 5'8" and a quarter, thank you, 5'8" and a quarter, and I'm blowing 300 plus pounds, and I'm not big enough.
Yeah.
She is, built like a brick house. They called her the Mexican quad queen for a reason, and I'm going to put that picture here again so you can see it. The reason they called her the Mexican quad queen is this chick's got legs, she's got everything, and yet she was dissatisfied with herself. And the reason being is because, honestly, you are putting yourself up on a stage, comparing yourself with everybody else. And the Bible says, they that compare themselves among themselves are not wise. Why? Because it just fosters and fuels that insecurity that just beats seemingly under every woman and every guy that's in bodybuilding and figure and fitness and bikini and classic
dysmorphia.
Yeah, it's body dysmorphia. Can you talk about that? Just speak to that a little.
Even today, like even coming out of that, I know what my body, the potential my body had, and how lean I could get. I still struggle with days that, oh my gosh, I'm not thin enough. Oh my gosh, I don't have any tone, and you always want to be the extreme, you always want to be not average. That's our goal. Anybody's goal is you don't want to be average, but it just, what your potential is. So you have to come to reality, like, look, that is not healthy. This is okay, so.
Yeah. And let me just say this, and I've told her this before, I like her look now far more than I did back then.
Yeah, I'm not so gaunt.
Yeah, but she's filled out. She looks great.
Got a little jelly.
Yeah, hey, I love it. But let's be honest, and I have the same issue, because this is what really drives, and this is what creates huge hurdles for couples to jump, is this thing where I am not satisfied with me. She is not satisfied with her. And no matter how much I compliment her, it's not enough, because she sees in the mirror what is the picture that she has in her mind and the picture that she has set up. And I see, honestly, I can see a guy that's a middleweight out there. I'm 300 pounds, and I'll look at that guy and go, man, he's bigger than me. That's body dysmorphia.
Yeah.
But that is the problem that you have when you have two people that come together. Even though we're walking together, we're both tracking in different directions because we both have problems in mental issues. I say mental issues, I mean more psychological issues, to where you feel like you're not enough, right? And putting yourself up, and the reason why I say bodybuilding is not a sport, it's a subjective beauty show is really what it is, because the status changes all the time. We had one year where they were looking for cats. I mean, you know what I'm saying? These really thin, sleek, all this other stuff. But we were told on the national level, they were looking for the little more muscular. So Sandra got a little more muscular.
Yeah.
So then that didn't work out. And so now we were having to change, she was having to change her entire look to go more towards that cat. And that year, they went with the more muscular girls. And so there was never any rhyme or reason, and it's very subjective. And so what you're doing is you are allowing yourself, and you are forming your self-worth based on what 5 people down at that table are doing. And how discouraging is it when you walk out on that stage and they don't even look at you?
Very.
Very.
And then you're working for what? A plastic trophy?
Yeah.
That's going to collect dust in the corner, or your plastic crown, or your plastic sword.
Or your swords,
or
yeah.
I mean, yeah, they're nice but it's like gone that quick. And then you look back when it's all said and done, and you're like, man, where did it all go that time? And then you really forget about all the precious times that you made with your kids that you lost. I mean, you're like, wow, it's just...
That's a big one, isn't it? Because we
look back now, we're like...
Oh, my. We had so much guilt.
Time. Yeah, all the travel time that we did without, there was a few times where we had the kids with us, and those were great times. But then you start thinking, we could have used that on vacations with the kids. We could have done something with our friends, just moments that you can't replace. So
yeah, we lost a lot of good things because we were selfish. And guys, there's no other way to put it. That selfishness that drives you, that insecurity that drives you.
It's a bondage.
The bondage, that drug-induced bondage too, from my standpoint, that just drives you into the dirt. And you tend to lose what your spouse is going through. You tend to lose what your kids are going through. And it's all about you. And so in the next segment, we're going to talk about the toxic nature of what happens if one spouse or one of the significant others is chasing bodybuilding and the other isn't. We'll be right back.